Hello, my name is Andrew Patrick. I'm the Director of Political Communications for the Coalition Stop Gun Violence. Welcome to CSGV at Home, our little web show we're doing here during the pandemic. Today I have our Director of Federal Affairs, Dakota Jablon, and our Senior Director of Advocacy, Lori Haas, to talk a little bit about what's going to happen tomorrow in an election preview. Guys, thank you for taking some time and talking to me.
Glad to be here to chat.
We're not on enough Zoom calls. So what we're seeing right now, Biden has the momentum in the polls. He tweeted yesterday or this morning about gun violence prevention. It's part of his closing argument. It's an issue that has not been talked about as much just because of the pandemic and the push for social justice. But guns are kind of like connected to all these things that we are talking about, whether it's domestic violence or suicides caused by the stress of the pandemic and the COVID stress that we're all living under. But what are you guys seeing in the way that these two campaigns are closing their campaigns on guns in general?
I'll take a stab at it. You know, we have seen in this 2020 year a march farther and more forward on gun violence prevention than we've ever seen. Think back to the primaries. You know, the candidates in the Democratic Party couldn't outdo each other. No, I'm the best on gun violence prevention. No, I have the most expansive platform. No, I'm going to be the most hard-hitting, and on day one, you know, I'll issue an executive order. You know, they battled among themselves to be the most progressive on gun violence prevention. And we came out with a candidate, Joe Biden, and a vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, who are both overly committed to this issue. They've been around the block in the Democratic Party. They've been through some trials and tribulations, you know, themselves, Kamala in her home state of California, and, you know, the vice president during his time as a vice president, living through mass shootings and gun violence in too many cities and in too many places and for too many reasons. So I think the momentum is on our side with regard to gun violence prevention. It doesn't surprise me at all that Vice President Joe Biden is tweeting about this as one of his signature issues. He has the most expansive platform on gun violence prevention. Many, many policies, many, many commitments, and far and wide, from committing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to gun violence prevention programs on the ground in cities and places that are suffering disproportionate amounts of gun violence, often in communities disproportionately affected by systemic racism and health inequities and other inequities. And, you know, he's going to get the job done. And with a Senate that we hope to flip and a House that will maintain, I think Dakota's going to have her hands full with a lot of work.
Yeah, it's such an exciting time, I think, to be in GVP. You know, Andrew, you and I both were out in Las Vegas a little over a year ago, which feels like a lifetime ago right now. But we got to hear from both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and all the Democrats that were running. And to be there at the Giffords March for Our Lives kind of GVP town hall when we had this Democratic primary of everyone, exactly what you said, Lori, kind of fighting to be the #1 GVP champion. And we got to hear from Vice President Biden, we got to hear from Senator Harris and hear about their plans, and now to actually have them running and all of these plans hopefully get turned into policy is just such an exciting time to be in GVP, but also for our country. And I think something that I'm so excited and proud of the campaigns for is that they know that gun violence is not just one type of issue. There are so many types of gun violence, whether it be domestic violence, everyday gun violence in communities, and particularly communities of color, the mass shootings that make the news, and the suicides that we really don't talk about a lot. In Joe Biden's plan, there are policies to address all of those issues. And I think that is something that is so exciting. And as well as that there are executive actions that he can take alone, but also that we need a hopeful blue Senate and keep the House so we can get life-saving policies also passed. And so I think this is such an exciting time, and I'm cautiously optimistic, but we are going to save so many lives if Joe Biden is elected.
Yeah, it's like you're talking about with the primaries last year. You had everybody just saying, I'm for background checks. I'm for extreme risk protection orders, from Tim Ryan and Steve Bullock on the stage to Bernie Sanders. It was like, it is an issue that in 2008 and 2012, we did not see this type of movement on gun violence prevention that we're seeing now. And I think it's an epidemic that kills 40,000 Americans each year. And it's something that is on the forefront of a lot of voters' minds as part of a pillar of what Biden and Harris are doing on the campaign. Trump, on the other hand, I think he's out there saying that Joe Biden's going to destroy your Second Amendment, in between whatever else he's saying, taking away Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever he's been saying on the campaign trail recently. Our organization published a report kind of warning against the idea of armed intimidation at the polls. And Don Jr. has been talking about Trump's army. Is there power in the gun lobby as there used to be, or is it kind of just irrelevant for the Republican case?
Absolutely not. I mean, the gun lobby has been vacant in this election season, this 2020 presidential election season, and frankly,
spending $30 million 4 years ago.
Yes, and
I remember seeing NRA ads during the World Series last year. Now I see them tweet stupid bumper sticker slogans.
You know, they're just ineffective and irrelevant. You know, the voter understands that as we've seen the numbers climb, the numbers of homicides are increasing, the number of suicides are increasing, as we've seen, you know, the issues during COVID and the health inequities disproportionately affecting certain populations, we're seeing access to gun affects some of those very same populations, you know, and put the risk of domestic violence higher and the risk of death from suicide higher. So it is understood by the voters what is necessary and what's at stake. You know, a country that values life, that values safety, that values, you know, your right to vote, my right to live free from gun violence, your right to live free from gun violence. You know, the current definition of the Second Amendment is something that, you know, A, makes no sense, and B, is just not wrapped in reality right now. We regulate every single one of our amendments. Every single one of our rights are in fact regulated. We have just failed to regulate access to firearms in a way that protects the public and individuals. To understand this as a public health epidemic is to recognize that we have not done enough. We need to do more. And as Dakota said, there's many avenues to do more. There are various types of gun violence, sadly, and we need to do something about all of them. You know, as a senator, Joe Biden lived through the 90s, you know, in Congress when we passed some good regulation with regard to BAWA and background checks and an assault weapons ban. You know, we're looking forward to all of that and more. Hopefully he can address, you know, the suicide epidemic in this country and access to firearms, and understand that things like lethal means safety counseling can make a very big difference to our veterans and to others at risk of harm. So we've got the tools, and I think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to get it done. And I'm excited to see the momentum in the Senate. I'm excited to see the momentum in the House. I was just at an event with Senator Mark Warner, and, you know, there is no shying away from this issue. And it's one that is understood. The time is now. The time is dear. You know, the more time that passes by without doing anything, the more lives at risk. So we're ready. We're absolutely ready. And, you know, I don't speak gun lobby language, and nor do I care to, and I refuse to do it. You know, I don't. If your version of the Second Amendment is the gun lobby's definition of it, no, I don't respect the Second Amendment.
Yeah, and something I think which is amazing that we're also seeing for potentially the first time is with House members. You know, I know Josh, who's our executive director, has been with our organization for 30 years. And he talks about when it was hard to get Democrats to really care about this issue. And they would oppose a lot of, you know, meaningful reforms. And that is not the case anymore. We have everyone from blue dog Democrats to progressive Democrats who are actively running on GVP, who are proud to have an F rating from the NRA. And I think that just shows like where the momentum is as our country. We have such a wide Democrat coalition in Congress, and the fact that everyone can agree on common sense gun violence prevention legislation, and that we're seeing candidates trying to flip districts from red to blue, and these are candidates that are running on GVP. It just shows where the American public is, and we have to do something to address gun violence in this country. And I think that, you know, if we are successful, and I really hope we are, and I'm optimistic and trying to be, that, you know, we can win the presidency and expand our lead in the House and take the Senate. I know that one of the issues of many, but one of the top issues is because of gun violence prevention. And that is just a huge win, I think, especially for youth. The March for Our Lives has really brought this issue to the forefront. We're seeing record youth turnout in the 18 to 29-year-old category. And I will proudly, even though I'm at the end of that category, I will proudly rep the youths and say our generation had enough, and that we are standing up, and that we will hopefully be the reason this election is won in the right way, and that Democrats take control of everything, and that we have this gun sense majority across the government.
And just to add on, Dakota, thank you. Yes, kudos. I bow down to the youth at this point, because I'm so happy to have them, you know, leading the way on this. And I just want to say, look at Virginia. You know, when a majority running on GVP, winning on GVP, and had a majority in the House of Delegates, a majority in the Senate, and a governor committed to this who ran loudly and proudly on it in 2017. Look at the expansive number of policies we passed in the 2020 General Assembly session in Virginia, well over a dozen bills. It's, you know, it's remarkable, it's astounding. And, you know, good things happen when you elect people who care about gun violence prevention and who are going to provide that leadership and that commitment. I think we're going to see it, like you say, when we expand our majority, the majority in the House. And I hope we take a majority in the Senate. It's time. GVP is on the ballot. It's on, you know, it's relevant, it's necessary, and I think it's time. And I think we'll see that come Tuesday night.
And like in 2018, this was the primary issue kind of for a lot of these House members running. They took the votes on background checks, on Charleston loophole, on VAWA, on the George Floyd Act, these different gun violence prevention policies. And those seats now, Virginia 7's a perfect example. They're not totally safe Democratic seats, but I mean, they are seats that we flip from red to blue and have a very good chance in a lot of them keeping them blue.
Oh yeah. Virginia is as a you know, little snapshot. You know, we took 3 seats away from Republicans in 2018 running on GVP. You know, it has become a top tier issue for Democrats. And frankly, you can't run as a Democrat if you aren't good on it. You know, you're going to be primaried from the left. And I think we're, you know, looking at that across the board in some localities and some races, just like we saw during the presidential primary. You have to be good on it. You have to be, you know, forward on it. You have to be committed to it. So I think you're right, Andrew. It's an issue that is at the top of the ticket. It's at the top of the voters' minds, and it's going to remain there for a while, I believe. Until
there's serious action on it. That's what people have been crying out for almost a decade now. So it's oh yeah, absolutely. The Senate, I mean, we're going to have, there's a very real possibility of the Democrats taking the Senate, and they're going to be led by Mark Kelly, a survivor, who is going to push this issue. Same with Hickenlooper, who signed these bills in Colorado as governor. But not just those places. In South Carolina, Jamie Harrison's focusing on it. Cal Cunningham in North Carolina, Kansas, Texas. MJ Hager's running very strongly on GVP. So it is it's an issue that is definitely going to be dominant in next session of the Senate.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm nervous, but I think it's just such an incredible time, and it's long past due. And I think that is what is showing, that the fact that we have, these moderate candidates that are full-fledged GVP advocates, that shows you can be moderate, on the economy or, on these other things. But the Democrat side, like we are a strong they are a strong GVP party, and they are running on this issue. No matter what else you're running on, GVP is on the ticket.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for taking a few minutes. Try to get some sleep. I trust everyone's voted. And it's going to be an exciting 48 hours.
Yes, it will be. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.